All right, well, let's get started. Thank you to everybody for joining this informational webinar about the India Immersion Program. I'm Claire Overman, CEO of AIEA, and we are so fortunate to be partnering with Acumen, represented here today by Anthony Guarnaccia, on this program. Um, I was thinking about kind of how to intro into what will be a much more important part that Anthony provides, but I had a few thoughts about a few things that I'm pretty sure of in this world and in our field. One is that India is important. It has been, it is, and it always will be. Obviously, in terms of numbers and mobility, but also in terms of research partnerships, collaborations, other types of exchanges, and all sorts of knowledge sharing. Another kind of fact that I feel is that new modalities, new ways of thinking and envisioning what international education and what knowledge sharing looks like is changing and has to change. We have to be thinking even broader and more creatively about this. Another thing I've been thinking about is that T&E is likely not for everyone. Transnational education, it won't be for everyone, but it will be for many. And for those for whom it is part of their strategic plan and can fit into their institutional strategy, it will be a game changer. And then my last thing that I've been thinking about and has been a huge part of my own career is the fact that immersing oneself in the higher education system, seeing on the ground how institutions work, what their partnership frameworks are like, who is in charge of these exchanges, and how these things work on the ground is absolutely critical. You really can't get the information that you need in order to make informed decisions without actually going to the country where you hope to partner. So these are just a few things that I've been thinking about as I've been getting really excited about this program. And I'm going to turn it over to Anthony now to talk a little bit more about his why.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate everybody joining to talk a little bit about this immersion program that we're running with AIEA in India. When we think about why TNE and why India, the why India piece of it all is fairly straightforward. It's one of the largest recruitment markets for students currently into the United States, but into most other countries as well. And as we all know, direct student recruitment in most parts of the Western world are under threat, specifically in the United States. When we look at visa issuance rates and visa acceptance rates, declining considerably over the last 2 years, things like duration of status changes and other things making the direct student pipeline all the more challenging. So that gets us into, India is a massive market, massive opportunity, but the why T&E piece of it, if the flows of students to our shores are coming, are slowing, what are our options and how do we start to reach that burgeoning student body? I went through and looked at a number of markets. If we think about the UK, Canada, Australia, and the United States, there's about 250,000 students that historically were able to access those four markets from India alone on an annual basis that have been shut out, either through policies like dependent visas, challenges like the United States is currently seeing, or the diplomatic issues that went on in Canada for a number of years. The decline is massive. And the only place that that capacity is going to be absorbed is in India. And India is going to find partnerships with US universities, Canadian universities, Australian universities, UK universities, and others to increase their capacity and grow their domestic sector. In their NEP 2.0 that was put out in January, you can see a lot of that was around building capacity and making India a net importer of students over time. And so that capacity is going to happen. The question is whether it's going to happen with US universities partnering with them or whether they're going to do it with others and build that capacity themselves. And so that really gets into the why TNE and why TNE specifically in India. It's going to grow. Indian higher education is going to expand. It's going to become more robust. And as Claire talked a little bit about, it's not just the historical MOUs, 2+2s, or even international branch campuses, but it really gets into upskilling, research, innovation labs, business and industry connections. These are the burgeoning areas and growth areas within the transnational education space in India. And it's very different and dynamic and unique. And so I had the experience with our organization to spend a couple of weeks in India in late February, early March. Across that time, we met with a number of leaders in the higher education space across India and South Asia. Coming away from that, I had a conversation with our leadership team and said, I think this is something we need to bring to US universities. We need to expose them to the Ministry of Education. We need to expose them to the work being done by AIU, the Association of Indian Universities. We need to expose them to the work being done by leading think tanks like AIEA and others, so they can really understand the complexity and the dynamism of the Indian higher education landscape and where those opportunities for partnership are. One of our core beliefs at Acumen is that the memorandum of understanding that a number of institutions sign upon coming into India is actually the last thing you should sign. And all the work up to that point should be about understanding your university's strengths, that those strengths fit within the marketplace itself, and the potential models and opportunities, and then the partners, and understanding then how you build out that MOU. Now, a lot of our institutions sign those MOUs first. They come in, they have some meetings, great intentions. And we see a lot of those things fizzle out over time. But when you do the pre-work, when you really understand the opportunities on your campus, how those opportunities fit within the market, and then the right model to bring that to life within the market, we find a lot more success within that. And so that's our goal coming out of this immersion program in October, is to really give you a sense of the market, a sense of the transnational education opportunities that exist within India, and then potential partner opportunities in some of the universities in India that are doing some really unique things. It is not just to say, well, you currently recruit these students, now do a 2+2 and that will backfill that. It is really about thinking about how you bring your educational tools to a different location and think about that from an offshore context. That's not to say that you need to be in the degree granting space at this point. That can be over time, but it is the way that we want institutions to start to think about this opportunity. And so with that, the program will be the 4th to the 9th of October in India. It's across Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai. There are a number of government, industry, and business and industry partners that we'll be introducing folks to. On the government side, it will be with NITI Aayog, the Ministry of Education, as well as the Association of Indian Universities. There will be conversations with leading Indian universities, as well as agents and other sector players that represent the student population and some of the thought process there. We'll also have, across Mumbai and Chennai, various opportunities that are being developed in India for higher education. So most are probably aware of the Gift City project, but there are a number of other projects throughout the country that represent opportunities for US universities to partner in a really unique way, be that a skilling lab, an innovation space, potentially research opportunities. And so we want to bring some of those spaces together and some of those developers and really present US universities with a full picture of the education space and what's going on in country. Overall, the fee will be 10,000 US. And with our partnership with AIEA, any AIEA member will receive a $1,500 discount. So it will be $8,500. And that is kind of the overview of the program. With that, we wanted to turn it over to a little bit of questions from anyone in the audience to learn more. And if there are no questions, then I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on in country and give you guys some new learnings. What is going on here? Let's see. Okay. All right.
Anthony, maybe I'll just jump in with a question to
Thank
you of like, because I have done several of these before in my career and have seen them offered
Yeah.
elsewhere. I mean, how do you think this differs from your average kind of familiarization tour?
So great question, Claire. I think a lot of the familiarization that's gone on, right, is meet with partners, dive into a little bit, maybe not get to the level of depth that we want to get to. So we really want folks to come in and really understand the potential models that are available, whether that is a 2+2 or a 1+1 master's articulation agreement, the franchising, campus within a campus models, full international branch campuses if an institution is interested in that, and then the various spectrum within each of those, right? Because there's within a 2+2, there's ways that you can offer courses within country and accelerate things. There's a variety of different optionality there. So we really want to get deep on that. We also want to be very focused on the regulatory environment and how that's changed in India, how the Indian government is embracing transnational education and these partnerships, as well as understanding the players beyond just the universities, but what types of opportunities exist from a financing perspective, from a development perspective. So a university doesn't necessarily have to come in, buy the land, build their own building, then staff and run the entire facility. There are other partners available in the ecosystem that are coming up in India. And so really exposing a university to what these different models could look like and how they can be stood up. And then at the end, doing some of those partner conversations and potential introductions with universities in country that are looking for US partners, and other global partners as well. So we find that we really want to get upfront very deep on the potential, the opportunity, and the models. And then towards the end, really get into some of the partnership conversations. What I find in the familiarization tours is a lot of it is very partner led. Come meet with this institution, learn about what's happening here, or this. We're trying to be very 360 about it and also go very deep, so that you come away with a deep understanding of what's going on in India. Now, of course, it's a big country, with a lot of different opportunities. So I'm not entirely sure 5 days is enough, but we can't ask people for more time than that. So we're hoping that it is an intensive crash course, if you will. With that, we are, as we think about some of the things, I've touched on research a little bit. There are some unique opportunities right now in the research space that are being presented, where institutions are looking for US partners and global partners on lab structuring and how to administer and run research labs. There are some opportunities from a business and industry perspective where employers are looking for skilling centers and upskilling specifically to help their workforce development programs. In the education side, there are a number of opportunities within the 2+2 and 1+1 masters, especially as we think about duration of status and some of those things that are very relevant for US institutions to think about how do we shorten that time that a student needs to be in the United States to complete their degree. Those opportunities are very relevant. Beyond that, thinking about campus within a campus model where a US university can come in and provide education within the country, potentially dual degrees, and things like that within that space that are really unique in being developed. So those are some of the areas and models that we want to explore with everyone and give some exposure to. And then there's the regionality, right? Most US universities are very familiar with recruiting out of Delhi and Mumbai and things like that. So we want to expose folks to the opportunities that exist in some of the tier 2 and tier 3 cities throughout India, that may be outside of the traditional view from a fly in, fly out perspective.
Anthony, would you mind if I added a little bit of commentary?
Love that, Roger. Thank you.
Most of the folks on this call know me, and I think what I would like to stress is that building partnerships with Indian institutions at this time, is the closest thing we know to a surefire bet. That the sheer demographic pressure on higher ed in India today, the fact that they need to double their higher education attendance in the next 10 years. If you just step back and imagine what it would look like to take the nearly 20 million students in US higher ed and double that in the next 10 years, and what that would mean for the university sector in the United States. The Indian government understands they can't do this alone. Anthony's been very polite about it. I'll be a little bit more blunt. UK and Australia are eating our lunch in India today. And the opportunity to create financial models around mobility of enrollment that are volume driven, are extraordinary at this time. There are institutions in India today that have 600,000 students studying online. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what you want to do. I'm simply giving that as an example of the sheer need, the demand in India today. with 1 in 4 people on the planet under 25 years old. And for global facing US universities, we're at a, I believe we're at a crossroads right now. Again, I'm not going to name names, but under the current administration, we see attacks on fundamental presumptions of the opportunity to study in the United States. We see that through ever increasing numbers of rejections in the visa process for a myriad of reasons, increasingly not related to the academic profile of the individual. We see that in duration of status issues right now. Hold on, we're going for an OPT ride next. And the reality is there will be those US universities that will make strategic decisions at the very highest level that we're going to turn inward. We will become more domestically focused. There may be political pressure in our state legislatures to do so. We're going to focus more on education outreach, on continuing education, on learners for life. And I think that's wonderful. But the reality is, if we want to be serious about being partners on the global stage, then we need to engage. And India represents that opportunity. I think it's important that we think about this in terms of dual degrees certainly help students take a breath and relax over duration of status. But there will be students who will not start a dual degree unless they have some comfort that if their visa is refused, they can finish in India. So part of this conversation is how do we work with knowledgeable partners who help us network so that we can prepare for the idea that you can receive a degree from our institution and never come to the United States. And that to me is a differentiator, Claire, because I love Navitas. I think Into a great, Shorelight, super. They don't know how to do that work. You need a situated knowledge base to help you with that work. And so if you're at institutions that think that spending $8,500 is worth going to understand that proposition more clearly, then we believe this is the opportunity you may very well crave.
One thing I would add, and I forgot to mention this in the itinerary, we will also be doing some engagement with the U.S. consulate and embassy, consulates and embassy while there. One of the big things for those that have engaged in India recently, T&E is a big focus. Partnership development is a big focus of the consulates and the embassy. So that is an opportunity that they are looking for U.S. universities to come in that are looking to partner, and they're willing to help facilitate those discussions as well. So we will be bringing those in. I apologize for that oversight in the itinerary. And as Roger said, statistics are hard to nail down on some of these topics, but there are about 500,000 students right now engaging in UK T&E programs globally. So when we think about that, there is a large opportunity for the US to continue to grow in this space and to be competitive. We have some of the greatest universities in the world and one of the greatest education sectors in the world. So bringing that offshore does give students an opportunity to engage. The other thing that I didn't mention philosophically, this is not the students that come to the United States to study often look for specific degrees. Those degrees carry a high ROI, whether that's from work opportunities in the United States or opportunities to work back in their home countries. Those that are looking to engage in T&E are also looking to work in their home countries where the employment opportunities are very different, which leads to very different academic programming. So where historically you may see a number of students enrolled in computer science or engineering or specific programs like that, when you're looking into being offshore in partnerships, that can be much more multidisciplinary and outside altogether of the engineering space, because the degrees needed, the infrastructure needed is dynamic and robust. And so just thinking about that as you're thinking about partners on campus that you're looking to work with, it does expand far beyond just the traditional computer science and engineering degrees that we historically see.
Yeah, in fact, I imagine some people on this call, Anthony, are already hearing from their enrollment managers that students aren't coming for an MBA. They're coming for a specialization in supply chain management or data informatics. They're not just coming for a computer engineering degree. They're coming now for machine learning or cyber. um, or AI design, and this is, if you have those kinds of strengths on your campus. And incidentally, Anthony, thank you for the comment. India also needs public health, community health, agricultural science, economics, critical areas for positive societal growth.
Well,
Um,
Roger, the fastest growing major, one of the fastest growing majors right now in India is psychology. And so that is not one that you would see show up on the inbound student flows into the United States, but domestically, one of the fastest growing areas is psychology and mental health. And so, just as you're thinking about these programs and thinking about partnership opportunities, we encourage you to think broadly and boldly and really assess the strengths of your institution, because the partnership opportunities are far beyond what we historically see from an inbound student flow perspective. So it creates a lot of dynamic opportunities to reach faculty that historically have been overlooked in the international higher education space. Any questions from others on the call today? Just going through the chat, it looks like right now, so far, nothing. But please check out our website. Reach out if you have questions. The AIEA team is available as well. Myself, Roger, others at Acumen are available to answer questions anytime you'd like. We are looking to get signups by the 15th of August so that we can confirm meeting sizes and itineraries within country. So really here in the next couple weeks, we're trying to form up the group that's going to be coming with us. But we're hopeful those of you on the call today will be looking to join. And thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your lunch hour, if it is lunchtime, and if it's not, out of your day.
Anthony, Roger, thank you so much for this wonderful webinar and to everybody for joining. Thanks so much for your partnership. I truly do think this is one of the most comprehensive 360 views I'm seeing in terms of a true immersion program. So I'm really excited about it. And indeed, we'll be following up with more information. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.